So let's move on to our final headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. And that is the director Ezra Edelman has been speaking out in the press on YouTube about his canceled Prince documentary that he was making for Netflix. It was, I think, announced a few months ago that this entire project was scrapped. This guy worked for 5 years on this documentary with full access to archival footage from the Prince estate, the full support of the Prince estate and the family and everybody involved. He was saying that this was going to be like a 9-hour documentary that was going to be on Netflix. And so I guess the estate of Prince thought it misrepresented Prince. You know, everybody here on this podcast, Billy Corgan's misunderstood. Prince is misrepresented. So many things going on here. But I guess the powers that be, were afraid of showing the real life facts and humanity of Prince, according to Ezra Edelman. And I guess over the last couple of years, you know, Prince is not here to defend himself, but there's been some certain, like, some nasty allegations that have been made about him that have surfaced, as they often do. Who knows if these allegations are true? And when you think about it, when it comes to documentaries or dramatized movies of musicians' lives, musicians in estates, they try to control that narrative, right? Like documentaries, we think of them as being like, well, they're always going to be unbiased. They're always going to try to show the full truth and the full story of an artist or whoever the documentary might be about. It might not even be a musician, but they can be just as controlled and just as manipulated as the dramatized versions of these artists, whether that be, you know, like a Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man or any of these other like dramatized versions of these artists' lives. And like in general, I've said this before on the channel, I like music documentaries way more than dramatized versions of bands. Like I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody. I've never seen Rocket Man. I actually despise when they do these dramatized versions of these bands and these artists, because it's always so cliche. It's always so cheeseball. They're always in the studio with their hands on the headphones, singing Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man or whatever it is. And it's always just really, really simplified version of these artists' stories that I guess would appeal to the masses. So I always prefer a music documentary as opposed to a dramatized film that you'd go see on the big screen. Documentaries can be skewed too. I think about one of my favorite ever documentaries about any band, and that is the Beatles Anthology, which came out in the mid-1990s. I still have my DVD copy. I love the Beatles Anthology. It's an incredible documentary. It's like 8 parts. It's like the entire story of the Beatles from when they were young all the way to the breakup in 1970. It really is this like incredible documentary of the Beatles. I watch it every once in a while because I just love it. And anytime I run into somebody new, I've been trying to tell my girlfriend Danielle, like, we got to watch the Beatles Anthology because it is just such a great way to show the Beatles story and the progression of their incredible career. But you know what? It doesn't tell the whole story. It skips over a lot of details, things maybe in their history that are, you know, things they don't really want people to know about, some of the raunchier or racier details of their history, whether that be their time in Germany or when they became famous in 1964 and, you know, came to America. There's certain things that you've heard about the Beatles over the years, and even saying it's like I've been reading or I have read Tune In. That was the big book by Mark Lewison, the big book of the first part of the Beatles' career from their kind of their inception through to 1962. I read that book, and there's a lot of stuff in that book that would never make it in the Beatles anthology. And I know that Apple has kind of prevented Mark Lewison from getting access to a lot of things because at the end of the day, it's an unauthorized biography of the Beatles. It's not the official story. The Beatles Anthology, that was officially released by Apple. It's the sanitized version of the story. Of course, we get all the stuff that we want to know from that documentary, the creation of all those great albums that they did, you know, and everything like that. And then, all the kind of the major milestones of their career and of their lives. But we miss out on a lot of that. So not talking about the Beatles, back to Prince, you know, I can see how there are certain parts, and maybe this Ezra Edelman, he got into certain things in the documentary that the estate did not want people to know. They are trying to preserve a legacy at the end of the day. I know they're making a Michael Jackson dramatized version of his life story, and there was certain stuff in there. They actually had to reshoot and rewrite some of the script because they had put stuff in there that they weren't legally allowed to put into that movie. And so, you know, Prince's estate might be a little bit nervous when it comes to presenting certain sides of his life and of his career, because at the end of the day, you want to get into some of the things about his life, how he got into music, his history growing up, but then personally, as a music documentary fan, like I want to hear about the music. I want to hear about the creation of these songs, of these albums, how they became classics. Because obviously Prince, an incredible musician, a multi-instrumentalist, one of the greatest artists to ever live. So I want to hear more about the musical side of things as opposed to the more gossipy side of things. And I even do this on this podcast. There are a lot of gossipy things that come out about musicians and different artists that I love, but I don't like to talk about those kinds of things on my show and on my channel because I just want to talk about music. I want to talk about the songs. I want to talk about the artists, and I don't really want to get into too much of these gossipy kind of stories that can be out on other channels and in the news. So I think I like to keep it about the music. So hopefully whenever this documentary, if they do put out a Prince documentary, it is focused mostly on the music because that is the side of things that I would be most interested in. And then it just kind of sucks because we're losing out on a 9-part Prince documentary, right? That would have been so cool. That would have been absolutely epic, sitting down on the couch, watching a Prince documentary like that. So hopefully we will get something of that ilk at some point in the near future. And, I don't really know much about Prince and his history. I'm not a huge Prince fan. Like I like his music, but I wouldn't by no means have ever gone deep into the Prince discography beyond the big singles that he's had over the years. And of course, the Batman soundtrack, which is one of my favorite soundtracks from 1989. So I think it would have been an interesting watch to see this, of course, wouldn't be just a documentary. I'm sure they would have combined it with some sort of, vinyl release or a soundtrack or a box set to go along with it, which would have been even cooler because again, focused on the music, getting some cool stuff from Prince that we've never heard before. And now we're going to get a sanitized version of whatever this documentary is going to be if it comes out, if they got another director attached or whatever. But again, as long as they talk about the Batman soundtrack, dedicate 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to Bat Dance, I'd totally be down that, or Trust or Party Man or anything like that. So hopefully we do get a documentary, but chances are it will not be as exciting as this, this 9-part Netflix documentary that got scrapped. But that's how it goes. The estate of Prince, they call the shots when it comes to how he's represented in movie form and documentary form and any form of media. They are trying to preserve a legacy because even after somebody passes away, we know this now, Prince, John Lennon, Marvin Gaye, anybody, any of these, Kurt Cobain, anybody who has passed away in the world of rock is like, yeah, they're no longer here, but we still have to sell reissues. We still have to sell remasters. It's essentially like free money because they don't obviously have to pay the Prince estate, but it's like they can just keep recycling that stuff for years and years and years. And if there's something that comes along that kind of diminishes or tarnishes the legacy of an artist, well, that's going to affect future sales and future, kind of opinions of that artist. So again, everybody on this show is misunderstood. Everybody's misrepresented. Like, come on, guys. Let's all be human beings. We know we're not perfect. We all have a dark side, right? It's time people knew about that. But we're not going to talk about my dark side here on the show. I'm not going to do that.